Emma, thanks so much for coming back on the show. It's always great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Mhm.
I wish that people could have heard our all the conversation in the lead up.
We just talked for about 45 minutes about a variety of topics,
We
a
did.
variety of topics, thinking about whether we're AI optimists or pessimists currently, which is an interesting topic. Um, and I actually think it relates to what we're going to be talking about today. But before that, I just wanted to highlight some of the amazing episodes that we've done together over the years. So, first of all, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It is always a delight. Some of the topics that we've talked about using data to create better product pages on Amazon.
Mm.
Amazing topic. We did that 3 years ago.
Wow. Oh,
2 years ago, we did how to elevate my copywriting to get better results on Amazon copywriting. So we covered product pages. We zoomed in on copywriting. 1 year ago, we talked about product images on Amazon, how to use product images to boost conversion rates. And then 8 months ago, we did product page optimization in a Rufus world. So we've covered really great topics over time. And today I was asking you, like, what's on your mind? Like, what are you talking about clients with? Like, what are they concerned about? What are the big mountains that you're trying to climb over? And you said which I think is related to like the pace of everything right now. What did you tell me?
I believe I said. First of all, wow, is this so? This is
This is
our
our
fifth.
fifth episode together.
Wow, that's
Mhm,
exciting.
mhm,
Thank you for inviting me back for number 5.
mhm,
And I believe I said something along the lines of the pressure of feeling like you have to be everywhere while at the same time it feels like everything is consolidating. And there's
mm,
this strange series of changes that are happening, mostly propelled by AI, but
mhm,
also just by the way that I think social commerce is also really getting embedded in a way that it hasn't been previously. And then, of course, we can't ignore that all of that is happening on the backdrop of profitability shrinking for a lot of businesses and having less and less resources to invest in all of these
mhm,
different growth activities. And so I think it's just creating this situation for so many brands where you feel like you have to be everywhere, you have to know everything, you have to be up on the latest. You have fewer resources to do it, and it also feels like it's all kind of, there are these few gatekeepers that are pretty much controlling all of the decisions, and so it's enough to cross a lot of eyeballs and boggle the brains.
This sounds like I feel like what you just described could be said about so many things, in an e-commerce world, in an Amazon world. Break that down for us, like, what does that mean if I'm an Amazon seller?
So, first of all, like even just the term Amazon seller,
Mhm,
it wasn't all that long ago that you really could build a business, a healthy business that was primarily
mhm,
focused on one channel.
and you can do it on the side. You could do it after your day job.
Yeah, and you could
Mhm,
start it with a few $1,000s, and that
mhm,
wasn't just the get rich quick
mhm,
gurus who were saying
right,
that. That was just the reality of what we were seeing so many people achieve and then even go
mhm,
on to really impressive exits with their
mhm,
businesses.
mhm,
And sure, you might still hear some of those breakthrough stories today, but that's just really not what the ecosystem looks like
mhm,
anymore.
mhm,
It's very difficult to be successful having that single channel
mhm,
loyalty, and it also is just very risky because it makes you incredibly vulnerable to any number of challenges that can come up, from a sudden increase in fees to changes in the algorithm to trends that there it's a lot to be able to, weather if
Mhm.
you are only singularly focused.
It's interesting, you meet someone at an event and you ask them what they do. It's either like Amazon seller or like I run an e-commerce brand or
Mhm.
like an e-commerce store. And there that means different things, right? Like that means very different things to I think to me at least. So when I hear like I run an e-commerce store, that's sort of more than just Amazon. It's like
Good.
maybe they sell on Amazon, maybe they don't, but they have a e-commerce brand. You generally think like they're more places than just singularly on Amazon. And I think if you were to like go in deeper on that, it's like I'm an Amazon seller, meaning like, am I doing like keyword research to like find products and like that's how I do my thing? Or, you know, do I sell like a certain thing that I'm very passionate about? Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like the conclusion that you're saying is like there's a need to be more than just thinking narrowly like I'm an Amazon seller and like there's a need to be an e-commerce brand and like what does that mean? Which is a mountain more work. Like it's part of the beauty of Amazon is like it was all like very self-contained. It's got like you when you work on your SEO, you're inside Amazon. When you work on your PPC, you're inside Amazon. When you look at your analytics, you're inside Amazon. And then as soon as you step out off of Amazon, it's like you have a million things to do. You have like a Shopify store to manage. You have like all these different plugins. Plugins could look completely random. There's all these different social media channels. There's like email marketing now. There's like for it's like there's all these things that you then begin to think of on top of logistics, on top of like margins, on top of all these other things.
Yeah.
So it gets exponentially more work, which is what you were saying. Like there's an increasing pressure to be everywhere. And I guess the question is, what is the pathway to, I guess, like, so what? Like, so now what?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think,
Well, one
there's this
other
like, yeah, do all
no,
the things all the
right.
time.
Yeah, because I mean, in some ways, it's the pressure that businesses have always felt. It's
Hmm.
just that it feels, I think, to some degree, like it's not a pressure that you can ignore in the same way that you can maybe say, like, "Oh yeah, I know I need to do that, but
Like, I know I need to be on TikTok. Yeah.
right, I'll get
Mhm.
to that one day," or
Mhm.
like, maybe that can be like a good opportunity for whoever buys my business to
Mm.
explore, but I think
Mhm.
I'll hold off on that. But before I go there, like as you were talking, one of the things that I was thinking about when you were explaining the Amazon seller and this idea of like it's all contained within Amazon and how we see actually that like even Amazon is not contained within Amazon anymore. It used to be this closed system where it was itself self-contained, and now not only can you advertise in all of these different
Mhm.
places, but it's linking out and making agentic purchases on other sites, and it's they have these fulfillment partnerships with TikTok and, um, Walmart, like, it's like, what is going on here? Like, even the wires is seeming competitor enemy kind of companies
Great
cannot
point.
deny the interconnectedness of what is happening.
Mhm.
And they
Great point.
can't have these like strong reinforced walls that are impermeable. So I
Mhm.
just like sometimes I think it's helpful when looking at what's going on to take that macro view to understand if the platform that you're selling on is also changing how they're doing things and the
Mhm.
decisions that they're making, then that may be some indications for similar decisions that you need to be taking with your business if you want to continue to evolve at that same pace. So, what do brands actually
Yeah, wow.
do?
Mhm.
I think, it can be a lot of things depending on what your resources are. So, it can be much more managed internally and more ad hoc if your budget is low. But I think one of the things to do before you even get to what to do is to take a step back and think about where your customers are and what kind of product it is that you're selling. Because I think like the other side of the equation is that some people have brands and products that, like, they're not products that are gonna be runaway successes on TikTok Shop or live selling kinds of, streaming wherever that's taking place on whatever platform. They may not be socially driven kind of products. And sometimes those are actually like the most successful kinds of businesses. Like
I would also say easier, yeah, easier to
I was
market
having a
too.
conversation with somebody at a birthday party who was telling me about a friend of his who they make paper towels
Yeah,
and toilet paper.
yeah. Mhm,
And I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of the ultimate business. People have to buy it constantly. It's relatively inexpensive, it's lightweight.
mhm,
And I mean, obviously, to start it now is a different ballgame. I'm not suggesting that people go out and sell those kinds of products, but if that if that business owner was like, "Well, I'm hearing all this buzz about I need to be on TikTok Shop and I need to be amping
mhm.
up my social efforts and I need to make sure that I'm
Right.
doing all these AI optimization and I need to be on Reddit and all these places." That's just gonna be wasting their time and effort that, like,
Mhm.
probably a better use of energy for them would be, how can I develop more relationships with
Right.
more retailers, and how can I find other businesses and be their preferred supplier for all of their offices across the United States or, get into international markets or whatever. I don't know if that's too much of a tangent, but I just think that it's important when considering all these things that while I am saying you can't necessarily be in one place. The other places that you choose to go need to be driven by what your business is and where the opportunities truly lie.
So I guess, I mean, as a takeaway from what you just said, almost, um, there's an increased pressure to be everywhere, but is it a real pressure?
Mm.
Meaning, is it a, would you say it's you find it to be a necessary requirement? Because sometimes people will say, like, "Do I need to go over there?" And it's like need is a strange word there. It's like all things being equal, one business that has lots of TikTok traffic versus one that doesn't, all things being equal, I would expect the one that has more TikTok traffic to have more sales. Pretty straightforward. So it's like all things being equal, do the extra thing. Of course, you'll get, further likely than not doing the thing. So like do all the things all the time. But there's also like the idea of I think about this a lot too. Like Good to Great talked about it, like the hedgehog technique. Like find something that you can do better than anybody else and do that very well. And then the next opportunity to take will reveal itself as you're doing this. You mentioned a couple things there, like maybe it's a B2B product and you get really good at B2B sales for an e-commerce brand. Maybe it's a heavy social product, so you get really good at social sales. Maybe it's, keyword driven opportunity and you sell the best toilet paper holder in the world and like you can get really well optimized for that because you have the best click-through rate and conversion rate, and you
Mhm.
hyper optimized for it. So, like, there's this concept too of like, hey, I'm gonna do like a few things really, really well, and it's better to do fewer things at a 10 out of 10 level versus spreading myself out so thin that everything is sort of like a 2 out of 10 basis. I will say it's really easy for me to like do shiny object syndrome. I'm like, damn, like I need this strategy and that strategy and that strategy, and then I like turn around and I've got like 7 things that I did in the last 90 days that are like all in a meh state. I'm just like, wait a second, I should have like invested all my time into like one thing and gotten that really good. So I'm trying to be more disciplined myself. But there is this huge pressure, even I feel it, to do everything all the time. So I guess the question for you is what's your take on like doing a few things much, much, much better than spreading yourself out too thin?
So that listening to everything you just said, I agree completely. And I think that that's where the danger zone becomes of allowing tactics and tricks
Hmm.
to be what you're chasing.
Mm.
And I think especially when you spend like, if you spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, for example, you're gonna be like a ping pong ball, just left and right,
Hmm.
like, "This is the one thing. No, this is the one
Yeah.
thing. No, everything that you did with this is complete waste of time. It's actually this." And
Right.
it is when you are operating from that kind of place where you are chasing what is gonna be the almost like golden ticket tactic that's going to change everything. That's where you really want and need to pause, because that's how you get yourself embroiled in too many things. But that
Mhm.
is also how you just really water down and dilute what makes you special. And ultimately, my conviction is, as AI permeates everything and makes it so easy for everyone to be doing all of these things. Like, if you wanted to just deploy AI to create a bunch of content on TikTok and create all of your imagery and do all of these things, and you don't even really need to have oversight for it if you don't want to. I mean, if you truly just felt like you needed to be everywhere and do everything. And you may even find some success with that. But the challenge being that everybody's still gonna be kind of on the same level playing field. That in and of itself is not a differentiation. It's
Mhm.
not something that's defensible, and it's really not something that long term is going to give you that brand equity and those customer relationships in a way that is meaningful.
Mhm.
And it kind of always ends up going back to the same thing in my eyes, which is, you have to be willing to draw a clear line in the sand of who you are as a business and what is most meaningful to you and who your customers are. And then that needs to be the thing that drives everything else. And that will give you a lot of answers to where you need to be and
Mhm.
can help save you from getting lost in this, seeing what everybody else is doing and feeling the pressure of, I have to catch up.
I think you said some really good stuff right there. One thing, you sort of said it, which was like, there's no silver bullets. Like, there's not just one thing to do, and then like that will completely transform your business. This was a quote I heard recently. It was like, there's no silver bullets. Everything's a lead bullet, and you like just need to do it. And I thought that was really interesting too, where it's just like, oh, you're absolutely right. Like anyone who goes on like LinkedIn or YouTube or social media and like you're in like the digital marketing world, you're going to see every single post will be like the game changer post. Like do this one thing, look at this incredible thing. And it's like if you were to actually do that at the pace at which you're getting the information, you would have like the most chaotic, unorganized business. And like most of the time, like it doesn't look like that. I think one of the coolest things, you know, whatever anyone's opinion is of Mr. Beast, it's like content for like 10-year-olds. But like the Mr. Beast like gave a talk one time about like how he optimized his like YouTube channel for success. And like you actually listen to it and you actually take away like really good principled optimization over time. He talks about like how his team like optimized one thing at a time. Whereas like we're gonna spend a lot of time developing like image click-through rate optimization. Like we're gonna get really good at the first click. And then the next thing they were focused on, like I'm gonna get really good at like hitting retention markers. So like how do we optimize for like the first 10% of the video? How do we
Mhm.
optimize for the first 1% of the video? Or like what can we do to help people reach the end of the video? And just got really good at a thing at a time. And I feel like when you do it that way, the pressure to be everywhere, like you're like like you have a plan for everything.
Yeah.
Like you know that certain things are gonna be important, other things aren't. You're gonna prioritize certain things now. You're gonna deprioritize things. And it just allows you to prioritize and like do something. And then you eventually realize that like doing fewer things well compounds over time, making the next thing you do a little bit more digestible. So if I'm an e-commerce brand and maybe I'm, heavily invested into Amazon, the need to like launch a Shopify store, launch like 7 social channels, like connect with influencers, like set up an email thing, like do all of these things. Yes, there's pressure, like that's never going to go away, but at the same time, prioritization is huge. Like prioritize like what you do, when you do it, pace yourself. Like real true, like actual business like hasn't changed. Like,
No,
yes, you
exactly.
can do anything now. And like, yes, social media is like telling you a million and one things to do, but like real actual fundamentals hasn't changed. So I think that's like an interesting view for anyone who sells something on the internet to like not be overwhelmed. And prioritization in and of itself is really hard to do. So like that's a great skill to get good at before anything else.
I love that you use the example of Mr. Beast because I actually think about this a lot. I have a YouTube channel, and
Mhm.
so I spend a good amount of time uh, digesting content about
Yeah,
YouTube. And Mr. Beast is always the example that's used. And the other side of the coin is like, yes, you can get so many really helpful pieces of information about the way that he built
sure.
his platform. But what a lot of people will do when they're teaching YouTube is they will look at Mr. Beast and the practices that he does now
Hmm.
running I don't know what his business is valued at, but I know it's
He said he wanted to be the first billionaire YouTuber. I
yeah, and
don't
I
know
don't
yet.
actually think he's probably, like, that far off from having a business valued at that. And people are looking at what he is doing with his channel and his business today and
Right.
drawing lessons for what people who are just starting out should be doing.
Yeah.
And that's one issue where you're not at the same level,
Yeah.
you don't have a team, you don't have
Right.
a
An enterprise he's got more than a
right,
team. Yeah.
with many different
Mhm.
types of products and revenue streams. But the other thing that I think is even more dangerous in some ways when looking at that for advice is Mr. Beast is optimizing for as many eyeballs as possible.
Sure.
For myself, someone who has a business channel, if I
Mhm.
prioritize virality,
Right.
I can actually destroy everything that I'm working on. My content should never actually go viral
Mhm.
because the content that I create is for a small group of business owners and it does not have that wide appeal. And if I get caught up in that game and if I'm optimizing for the things that he needs to optimize for,
Yeah.
then I could actually erode my trust and credibility, destroy the makeup of my channel, and then be forced to create content that wouldn't actually serve me and the business that I'm building.
And funny enough, like Mr. Beast, I said, yeah, like he's received criticism for optimizing for views and then trying to do something that like I think there was like some controversy. Like anytime he does like any philanthropy, he's often criticized of like, why are you making this like a clickbaity video? Like this is like a serious subject. So it's like, what are you optimized for is an interesting piece of the puzzle too. And
Mm.
it get so like that's another reason to like decrease the pressure where it's like you don't need to optimize all things for all people. Every metric doesn't need to do everything all the time. And I would say the hard part too with a lot of brands that I talk to, it's like understanding what the metric is to optimize for is really tricky. I just did an episode about like total ACOS. It's a good episode. I actually really like the topic of like total ACOS should be deprioritized for a lot of brands because, you know, lower total ACOS doesn't necessarily mean more profit at the end of the day. The hyper summary is like if you want the lowest total ACOS possible, like turn off 80% of your ads, right? Like then your total ACOS is really low.
Right. Yeah.
But there's a lot of nuance there. But like the point is understanding what to optimize for and how to optimize it. And then like working your way backwards from that. So like most companies are optimizing for bottom line profit. But then like understanding like the web that like leads to it um is really difficult. Like that takes a lot of trial and error to figure out like what are the levers to pull on for any particular company to increase those profit margins and profit totals. And in the e-commerce world, it's tricky as well. You know, I talk to people predominantly in a PPC context, and a lot of them do have this pressure where it's like, I need to get my PPC at a certain spot. And it's either two camps. Like one is a silver bullet mindset, meaning like if I get my PPC in the perfect spot, then you know, my business will 2x, 3x, 5x, whatever. And there's often a lot more nuance to that. So like that's a component of it. Um, the other component is I want to optimize my PPC really well so that, you know, I almost want to like abdicate PPC responsibility where it's just like, I wanna just, like, not think about it, so then I can do, like, other things, and other things, and other things, and, like, not think about any of them. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, actually, there's, like so, like, the real answer is that it's actually, like, really hard to do. It's, like, not a silver bullet. Yes, it's a lot of work, and, like, after you do it, like, this there's still management that needs to happen with it. So it's really it's a lot. Like, there is a lot of pressure, but if you, like, focus on, like and truly understand, like, what moves the needle, like, where to spend your time, um, that's a great way to relieve some of that pressure
Yeah,
to
like,
be
it
everywhere.
makes me think of, like, even something like weight loss or getting in shape. Like, the fact remains that, like, the ways that you get in shape and lose weight are you need to pay attention to what you're eating, and
Mhm.
you need to move.
Right.
And then once you get to wherever you want to go, you do not stop doing those things, you have to continue doing them.
Right.
And, like, you make such a good point because I think that there especially the areas of business where we don't like them, there is this like, huge temptation to just be, "I wanna get to a point where I can just delegate this, and
Mhm.
then I don't have to think about it."
Mhm.
And then what happens is you completely take it out of your purview, you hand it over to somebody else, and then 6 months or a year later, you need to take stock of everything, and you realize, "Oh my gosh, what a
Yeah.
mess has been made."
It's a classic I mean, delegation versus abdication, where it's just like, "I don't wanna think about this anymore, goodbye," versus, like, system setup and, like, management, like, that takes work.
Yeah, and those are a lot of the conversations that we have with clients of people that are sort of like, I handed all of these things off. I went too far to the extreme and now I'm in cleanup mode of
Mhm.
needing to like I've taken back control of my PPC and
Mhm.
I'm
Right.
needing to like just go and do some of these things that like I ignored and it never stops being about the fundamentals, and
Mhm.
the that isn't the exciting thing to hear, and it's not the sexy thing that you're going to see people talking about a lot, but at the same time, I think it can be a source of reassurance to know that, like, that's also where you can outlast a lot of
Mhm.
people.
I just did an episode with, one of our e-commerce brand clients, and the takeaway was the same, like, this business is, like, growing, and he's just like, the whole world is changing, but, like, business fundamentals are, like, remaining." And it was the exact same takeaway, which was like, I know there's a million and one things to do, but, like, we're gonna do these things really well, and we're gonna continue to do them, and, like, periodically, we're gonna, like, expand our capacity and, like, do more stuff, but it's, like, gonna be at a healthy pace. So I would say, to summarize, to conclude a takeaway, if I'm a brand and I'm struggling with the immense pressure to be everywhere, I think it's worth sort of acknowledging it and sort of saying, like, yes, all things being equal, more things is going to be better than less things. However, it is almost an impossibility to do all things at a 10 out of 10 level, to do everything 10 out of 10. If you do try to do everything and you're ping ponging around, I think you're going to end up doing many things like a 2 out of 10 quality, which is doing 10 things at a really poor level is worse than doing like 2 things really well. So I would think of the hedgehog. I would get into my hedgehog mode. I would curl up into a ball and I would like gain momentum that way. And then eventually, once I have capacity through like proper systems delegation and management, then you could begin to do more stuff over time. So it's just a classic approach. To make it any more specific about like channels and platforms and so forth, I think is like icing on the cake, right? Like if there's someone who's just on Amazon, right, and it's like, where's my next $10,000 of revenue? Is it truly like to do 10 more things, potentially thin approach, or is it, potentially right in front of you? And like maybe there's some opportunity right in front of you to do what you're currently doing better and more efficiently and more effectively. And that prioritization decision making is the hard part about business.
Yeah, a great book that I think can be helpful for people in this sort of space is 10x is I think it's called 10x is better than 2x,
10x is better than 2x, or 10x is easier than 2x.
easier, something like that. And the whole concept
Yeah.
being that it's actually the big picture thinking that can really galvanize the strategy necessary.
Yes.
And and if you're just trying to always go after those smaller incremental wins, you're not really ever going to get to
Mhm.
that um
Yes.
growth.
That's absolutely this is actually a good book. I read this book. It's 10x is easier than 2x
Easier. Okay.
from Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. Because if you think about it, that's exactly what we were describing. It's like 10x is easier than 2x. And if I remember correctly, I read it came out in 2023. Feels like a decade since I've read it. But basically my one of my big takeaways from it was like if you ask yourself like what would it take for me to 10x, like instead of going from 100,000 to 150,000, uh or I guess we'll actually use the 10x and 2x. Instead of going from 100,000 in sales to 200,000 in sales, the claim is to go from 100,000 to a million is actually easier. And then you would ask yourself like, "Oh, like how do I go from 100,000 to a million? And why couldn't we do that?" You would then list the reasons why you couldn't do it. And like those are the things to focus on. So it's like a way to like hyper prioritize where it's like, what is the real blocker? As opposed to if you're sitting there, you're like, oh, to go from 100,000 to 200,000, we should do this and this and this and this. And you end up listing a lot more stuff. So it sort of like forces your brain to say, like, what is the one roadblock that would stop me from 10xing?
Yeah.
Um, and then like you do that because it becomes like crystallized. That was my takeaway. Do you have, is that how
No,
you
that
remember it?
yeah, I that's what I remember as
Hmm.
well. And just the idea being that um you might also sort of undershoot what you're capable of
Hmm.
in thinking about how to solve a problem, that sometimes there are actually problems that either resolve completely, were never problems to begin with, or just
Hmm.
change
Yeah.
when you consider them on a bigger scale, and that it's a similar amount of effort, except that the effort required is also to be really good at knowing what to stay focused on, and that's where like the most friction is going to be if you're taking
Yes.
that approach.
Thank you so much, Dan Sullivan, for bookend for ending this episode. Key takeaways from the 10x is better than 2x. Stop optimizing everything. Don't try to optimize the 80% of tasks that yield average results. Eliminate them. Go all in on the 20%. Double down on activities that are high impact and uniquely yours. Delegate the other 80% so you can focus on the highest value work. I mean, this is like a reminder of
Yeah.
some basics, fundamentals as we look at all things. I needed this. I started our call about an hour ago with you, um, talking about how I'm doing too many things. I can't stop. But yes, I need this exercise. I needed this episode myself. I started at Badger to help scratch my own itch of PPC optimization, and I did this episode with you, perhaps to give me the medicine that I needed in my own
Reminder.
life.
Yeah, funny enough, I actually woke up before my alarm clock this morning thinking about how I need to be amping up like every single platform activity and all these things and how I'm so behind. And this was a good reminder for me too. So,
Amen. Well, I think we can leave it there. Emma, where can people get in touch with you? We'll have links to whatever you tell us to put a link to right now.
yeah,
Where can people get in touch with you?
you can learn more at my YouTube channel at Marketing by Emma. I also my website is marketingbyemma.com if you'd like to explore
Hmm.
how we can help you with your brand strategy on Amazon and beyond. And I'm on LinkedIn occasionally as
Hmm.
well. So those are
Amen.
the main places. Yeah,
Terrific. So what you're saying, Amazon and beyond, meaning like we need to be everywhere, right? There you
exactly.
go.
They actually prefer.
Yes.
So
Emma, thank you so much for coming on the show. Absolute joy, absolute pleasure. Hopefully, I'll see you back on the show in about a year from now.
thank you for having me back. It was a pleasure as always.
Bye bye. Have a good one. And everyone else, I'll see you next week here on the PPC Den podcast.
I've launched campaigns and picked keywords. I've got my bits, set placements too. Now that we say